Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Ruth Gotian. You are just going to love this. I first spoke to her a few years ago, and I finally managed to get her onto the show. Hello, Ruth. How are you?
I am doing so well. How are you?
I'm very happy to have you here to be talking about success, the success factor, and life in general. So the
life
success
is good.
factor, tell everybody what your work is all about in your words.
I am obsessed with success, why certain people have it, how the rest of us can attain it and maintain it and sustain it. And because I don't believe anyone wakes up in the morning aiming to be average. So my work, literally, I got my doctorate in this, was to study extreme high achievers, because if I was going to study success, I wanted to see the best in the world. And over the years, it has expanded. So I have interviewed Nobel Prize winners and astronauts and Olympic champions and NBA champions and NFL Hall of Famers and CEOs of top companies and senior political officials to figure out what it is that they have done. And I then reversed engineered their path and created a blueprint in the book, The Success Factor. And that's what I talk about and write about and am passionate about, is helping others elevate their own success and make an impact on the world.
And that is beautiful. And that is what we do here every day. And yet, I still meet people all the time who, I'm not saying that they wake up and they aim to be average or mediocre, but they really don't want to do what it takes to achieve in a big way. What would you have to say about that?
I really think those are the people that haven't yet tapped into their passion, what they love doing, the reason they wake up in the morning, and recognize that just because you're good at something does not mean you're passionate about it. There's a very big difference. I used to work in finance. My first 2 degrees are in business. I worked in international banking. I was good at it. I got tenure in 9 months. I didn't like it. And I left after 2 years. And just because something was your passion once doesn't mean it's going to be your passion in the future, because our interests change. And a good tip for that is our passions usually change when we've had a major transition in our life. A new job, a new partner, a new child, a new home, a pandemic. These are things that cause us to reevaluate our priorities. And we have realized during this pandemic, life is short. We need to focus on the things that bring us joy. And there's actually research out of the Mayo Clinic that shows you only need to spend 20% of your time working on the tasks you love in order to decrease your chances of getting burnout. So there's just win-win-win if you want to really achieve more and make an impact.
Wow. I thought you were going to say decrease your chances of getting cancer, because I think you said Mayo Clinic, but I could have got that wrong. Stress and physical and emotional and psychological factors all go together. So are you going to tell everybody what the success factor is? Because there is only one, according to the title of your book.
Yes. So that's actually a hook. There's actually 4. But the issue is these are not habits because you cannot copy other people's habits. So you heard, oh yeah, high achievers wake up at 4:00 in the morning. You should do that too. You can't. You can't. Not if you're a night owl and don't go to bed till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You're not going to wake up at 4 or 5 and be productive. But there are lessons we can learn about what they do during those first hours. So what's important to realize is that there are 4 mindsets, not habits, because mindsets you can emulate. The first one, as I mentioned, is that passion. It's really what we call in adult learning your intrinsic motivation. It answers your why. Why do you want to do this? And there's usually a story. There's usually a personal story that it's connected to. Somebody who dedicates their life to finding a treatment for cancer. Usually there's somebody that they were very close to who has suffered from that. It takes a personal toll. There's that fire in their belly is because they don't want anyone else to suffer like that person who's dear to them suffered. So we need to tap into our intrinsic motivation, which is different from extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is awards, rewards, bonuses, promotions, diplomas, certificates. That's when other people are judging us. And if other people are judging us, that's good for the short term, but that's really difficult to maintain, is living up to other people's opinions. So instead, find that intrinsic motivation. That's number 1. And when you find it, number 2 is going to come very easily. You are going to outwork everyone. And I don't mean working 18 hours a day. I mean, it's the way that you are viewing challenges. High achievers never question if they'll overcome a challenge. They have the confidence that they will. So instead, they focus on controlling what they can control. And they ask themselves, what is that strategy I haven't thought of yet to make this happen? You need to add that word yet, because ultimately, high achievers fear not trying more than they fear failing. So that work ethic and perseverance is number 2. That third one is that strong foundation, which is constantly being reinforced. Every high achiever, if you ask them, they will never, ever, ever rest on their laurels. They always go back to how they started practicing at the beginning, what they did, the technique that they did, the skills that they worked on, the experiments that they did. They don't give that up. They want to make sure that they have that strong foundation constantly. And last, but certainly not least, and this one is the one that surprised me, all the high achievers. Now, you've heard of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Mark Cuban. They're notorious for reading 3 to 8 hours a day. And as a fellow voracious reader, I get that. It's not reading that made them billionaires. It's actually opening your mind up to new knowledge, saying, I don't know what I don't know, but I want to figure it out. And I want to learn about different ideas, because if I can connect 2 ideas, that's innovation. But I have to open my mind up. Now, they do it through reading books, but you can read articles. You can listen to podcasts such as this one. Hopefully, we're sharing good stuff here. Videos, Clubhouse, YouTube, LinkedIn Learning. I mean, it's endless the way you can learn new things. But it's also talking to people. And the high achievers surrounded themselves with a team of mentors who believed in them more than they believed in themselves. So those are the 4 elements of success. And then what I have done in the book is I actually shared the stories of the astronauts and the Olympians to underscore these ideas and actually teach the reader how to implement these things in their own lives. So it's not just ideas, there's actually implementation tactics.
Ruth, I can't believe how succinctly and eloquently and beautifully you described the 4 success factors. And I think people will want to find out more about that. The Thoughtful Leader audience is made up of people who are not only thought leaders, but they put more thought into their thought leadership. You may have heard that either on this podcast or in my posts. I'm really passionate about people putting enough thought, the right kind of thought, and just some thought into their thought leadership. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
So these are the people, remember I said they surround themselves with people who know more than them, and they're always making these connections. So it's fascinating to me. One of the stories that I share in the Success Factor is the story of James Hondo Gertz, who was the Undersecretary of the U.S. Navy. And he said a few things that I thought, it was one of those ideas that he planted a seed and I can't get it out of my head. He said now he's in charge, basically the entire U.S. Navy. And he said he sees the organizational chart and he flips it. He flips it so that the people who he is serving are the ones at the top of the food chain. Because if they're not happy, nobody's happy. And they are the reason that we do what we do. He said they're the most important. So flipping that org chart, he put a lot of thought into that, which is why he's also talking to the people who are at the front line. Now, he was also at one point in charge of all the innovation for the U.S. Navy. And he is the one that said, look around for ideas. See how you can connect things in a way that no one else has considered. Because when you're able to do that in a new way, that's innovation. Now, the only way that you can do that is if you observe and listen more than you speak. And I think that's really what sets these thought leaders apart, is that they take that pause, they're watching, they're learning, they're constantly scanning. What can I do better? How can I do it better? What can I learn from other industries? They're extremely thoughtful about all of this. They are the last one to speak. They are never the dominant voice. In fact, one of the people who I interviewed was actually a Tony Award-winning producer. And she said she fronts the money for the shows, but she's the quietest one in the room. She wants to hear what everyone else is saying first. Very thoughtful.
Oh, wow. Do put her in touch with me. I've got a few scripts. So you have a very busy life, and, launching a book was just one activity last year. So what's an area where you have had to be more thoughtful or become more thoughtful yourself over the past few years?
So one of the things that I really had to cut away were these non-value adding tasks, things that sounded like they were good to do, but they were not providing the value that I thought they would do. I had to cut those types of things. And I also sadly had to cut some people who everything was a crisis, everything was a problem, no problem was too small. They were just constant naysayers, constant negative people. And the older I get, I want to be around positive people. I don't want to be around negativity. There's enough negativity in the world. I don't need people to add to it. So one of the things that I have learned is that if people are not paying rent, they cannot take up real estate in my head. And those problems and those people are no longer part of my head.
Wow. That sounded very authentic. I believe you. You're credible. But for people listening, because our thoughtful listeners have folks like that in their life, I'm sure they do. And some of them are family members, or some of them are long-time friends. And what would you say to them?
So you can't exactly cut out family. That's kind of hard to do, but nobody says you have to answer every single cry for help, because focus on the ones that are serious, not the ones that they think are always serious. And I shared the story in the Success Factor about a colonel in the Army. We're actually in grad school together at Columbia University, and we were part of this conference. And we actually had people who were complaining about just everything. I mean, literally no problem was too small. And we were older, we had families. And I looked at him and I said, why are you getting upset over this? Because I was upset that everyone else was upset, right? Their problems became my problems. And he did multiple tours overseas. And he said, nobody died. It's not a problem. When someone dies or almost dies, then we have a problem. Someone touching your coffee pot is not a problem. And that just put everything immediately into perspective, immediately. And every time I hear someone just creating problems out of nothing, in my head, I'm thinking, nobody died. It's not a problem. It's just something we have not found a solution for yet. So let's get control over what we can control, find a solution, and move on. And it works.
Thank you for sharing that. A few weeks ago, I was rereading Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Ah, yes.
And it's all small stuff. And it was Wayne Dyer who'd sent the author that little note. And I'd forgotten that, the late, great Wayne Dyer. I have immense respect for people who write these iconic books and books that sell tens of millions of copies. And, also anybody who writes a book, whether it sells one copy, 100 copies, or 100,000 copies, because as you know, our sister company, The Book Midwife, is all about encouraging people to put into book format what they have been through, their experience, their expertise, their story, their wisdom. Having written your book, I'm putting you on the spot here, and we did not rehearse this, listeners, but I know Ruth will answer it honestly. What did you learn most about putting your wisdom into a book and putting yourself out there?
So this is actually a very personal story. In March 2020, I got that phone call that nobody wants to get, which is Daddy's in the hospital, come quick. So I quickly packed a bag, I had just published a textbook that I co-edited, threw it in the bag and boarded the plane. And my dad was in the hospital for several weeks, and I spent 12, 18 hours a day at his bedside. And my laptop was open, and I was by his bedside and I was working, and he kept asking me, are you getting ideas for your next book? And I said, I'm just looking for ways to keep you alive. And when he passed away in August 2020, a week later, I got an email from a publisher saying, we have seen your work. We'd like to talk to you about a book. And I knew that was my dad's nudge to get this next book out. And it was published. The publication date was on the 17-month anniversary of his funeral. What people don't realize, unless you have lost a parent like this, it is hard. It is an emotional roller coaster. Now, going to work every day, that was the easy part. I was so busy. My mind did not have time to wander. But the weekends were really hard because I didn't have that structure. And writing this book became the way I coped with the loss of a parent. So for me, it was a coping mechanism. And I knew, because I was in such a raw place, the only way I could do that was to write from a very authentic place, to be very transparent, to write a book that I had always wanted to read, but nobody had ever written. Nobody ever put these pieces together. I was writing the book that I had always wanted. So when I say that I am proud that I got through it after losing a parent. I am proud that it maintained my voice, that I was able to share the stories of these incredible high achievers, but also sprinkle in some lessons that I learned along the way, which had made me improve my own success, even while going through such an incredible loss and a really, really hard time. So there was heart and soul that was put into the book. And that's why the book is dedicated to my dad's memory.
Oh, well, bless you and bless him for inspiring you and guiding you through it, if you believe in that. Now, thinking of you out there with this book, out there, many of our listeners are authors and aspiring authors. It can feel very scary to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. And did you ever have that thought or related thoughts about, oh gosh, what will people think? Will they like it? Do you care if people like it? I know that sounds a stupid question.
Yes, of course I cared. I put so many hundreds, if not thousands of hours into this. Of course I cared. I actually tested a lot of the material. I write for Forbes, I write for Psychology Today, and just through those two platforms, I was writing, while writing the book, I was also writing 6 articles a month between those two platforms. So I was testing the material to see what resonated and what didn't resonate. And that made me rework some parts, but that also made me double down on other parts. So that was a great testing ground.
Well, anybody who has not yet written their book, I was just chatting with another client earlier, and we agreed that nobody should feel any pressure to write books. I get very passionate about it. Ruth's passionate. Many of our guests have written books, not all, but most. And, sometimes you'd be forgiven for thinking that is the only way to be successful and you must write your book. And, what I've noticed is people will write their best book when they have that passion, when the timing is right, when they find the right mentor. I'm trying to pick up on all your threads before we finish. The success factor in writing a book, there are probably, 4 or more of those as well. And one of the interesting things is people step up when the time is right. And if we're pushed to do things, not just books, anything, if it's that extrinsic as opposed to intrinsic motivation, forget it. At some point, it's not going to support you to do what it is you think you should be doing. Well,
it's so interesting that you say that, because I had a problem when I started writing the book. Chapter 1, after I got the contract, chapter 1 was rejected 3 times. Because I'm an academic, I'm a faculty member, I'm used to writing academic papers. Nobody wants to read an academic book, right? So it kept getting rejected because it sounded like the academic professor speaking. And I reached out to a friend of mine who published a book, and I said, look, I can't get past chapter 1. What's going to happen? So he said, well, who said you have to start with chapter 1? He said, well, what's your favorite chapters? The topics. I said, 3 to 7. He said, start with that. So I wrote 3 to 7. Then I wrote 8 through 10. And then I finished my writing with 1 through 3. And it became so much better than I ever could have imagined. It's now some of my favorite topics that are written in chapter 1 through 3. But I had to write it at the end after I had found my voice. It was not working at the beginning.
What Ruth is talking about, many people will know that's against our religion at the Book Midwife. And she will be forgiven because she was not one of our clients. So disclaimer over. That we have a strong belief that most books benefit by being written in order. However, it's part of a very, very strict, very detailed, comprehensive process, which we won't go into now. I don't know how we got onto this, probably because you have a new book and I'm all excited about talking about books for a change. And let's just remind people that when you write a book, if you write a book, it can be part of a thought leadership and thoughtful leadership strategy. And that's the way I like to look at books. It's a book produced in isolation and left there on its own can only go so far. But when it is related to, and let's say at the hub of the whole strategy, then magical things happen. So I would encourage the listeners to check out Ruth's profiles on social media, on business media like LinkedIn, and you'll find lots and lots more that you can listen to and read and watch. We have about 1 minute left. In fact, half a minute. Any last tip for people listening, Ruth?
I think really try to find and tap into what it is that you love doing, and consider doing a passion audit in order to figure that out. And if I can share a website where they can find such a passion audit, there's one obviously with the book, The Success Factor. But if you want to start out with that assessment, it's a simple 3-column exercise right on my website, ruthgotian.com/passion audit.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. And I hope people will connect with you. I'm sure they will. We appreciate your time because we know how busy you are, how successful you are. And I'm just very glad to have been able to share you and your wisdom and your passion with our tribe. So thanks again, Ruth Gotian, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.